You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona, and with me always are my good friends.
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike in Texas.
And it is a beautiful day again today here in Arizona. And actually got to go out today and fly an Extreme Flight MXS 73 inches on a DA70.
What?
Yeah. So before we get started, how about a word from our sponsors?
Okay. Let's have 2 words.
Or 5 words.
3D Air Adventures, adding fun to the RC hobby, one layer at a time.
Feeling weak and powerless? Sounds to me like you need A-Power batteries. When someone needs the best, they always choose the A-Team. A-Power batteries. Get on the web and get yours today.
And we're back. Welcome back to the podcast. And yes, I was able to go out today and actually fly. Actually, Barry called me and he's like, "Hey, we're going out to the field. You should come out." And I'm bringing my my DA70 73-inch MXS from Extreme Flight. So I showed up and he had his turbines there, and I was busy doing stuff, but I wanted to go because I haven't seen him in a while, so I didn't really take anything. And when I got there, he's like, "Here you go," and he hands me the MXS. So I took it out there and flew, and it was funny because most of us are used to flying EDFs, right? So you're good for what, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
Right.
When you're flying a turbine, we've been doing a lot of that. So you're good for maybe 2.5, 3, 4 minutes. Now, doing 100 miles an hour, it goes by pretty quick, and it feels like you're up longer than 2 or 3 minutes. So I take this up, and the timer on the radio goes 16 minutes.
You're like,
that doesn't sound right.
End?
Oh no, it was right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I flew till my neck hurt, and then I'm like, okay. And Barry's like, "Well, here, let me fly it." So we flew for 12 minutes, landed, and still had half a tank left.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun. We threw the thing around. It flies just like my smaller. I have an Extreme Flight MXS 64-inch. And it's the baby metal one that Jay and I took down to Texas and let Jay fly or crash or whatever he calls it. And anyway, it flew just like that. It was very surprising. It had literally the same characteristics. The only thing that I would do differently is that I would put a DA100 on it.
Okay.
Why is that?
Because I came down low and I tried to hover it, and it hovers really great, but then it starts to torque. And as you give it more power, normally you guys have flown my DA120. If you give it power, it's gone, right? If you come up into the vertical and you cob the power, it's going vertical. Well, this one didn't do that. It would hang, and it would slowly start going up, going up, and then I have to push forward to get out of it. So I think with a DA100,
is that a prop choice issue, or is that a?
Well, the prop was the recommended prop for the DA70. But I just think a little bit more horsepower would make that thing.
That usually solves most of our problems. A little more horsepower.
I'm not saying a lot more horsepower, because DA100 and a DA70 are fairly close. You put a DA120, you're talking 2 cylinders now instead of just 1. But it was recommended for this particular airplane. So I don't know, Mike. Maybe a different prop would have changed it, but I don't know. I didn't get the
yeah. I guess the only way to know would be to try it and see what happens.
Yeah, but
because if you put a lot of torque on that thing, the engine's going to just only go as fast as it can go, right?
That's correct. And
So-
you know what? Honestly, it was running a little rich, so that may have been a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of it too. We probably lost a little horsepower because it was so running so rich. It was a little cooler when we were flying it, so it sounded rich. And I only flew it, that one time. So, and then unfortunately, I had to make a few pit stops along the way. I was kind of swung by there on my way to do errands, but otherwise, I would have got to fly the L-39 turbine too. He's like, "You sure you don't want to fly this?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm already late." I so wanted to do it, but I just was late, and I'm like, "Yeah, I got to get going." So, but anyway, it was a good week, and I think we're supposed to have rain the rest of this week. But
Oh my gosh, rain in Arizona.
yeah,
that's
they say
surprising.
that, and it may sprinkle, and then they go, "Hey, it rained."
That's rain. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The sacrifice was
Today would
successful.
have been a terrible day to fly tissue planes here.
Oh, was it?
It was
breezy
rainy. Yeah, it was rainy and windy.
and
It would have
windy?
been, it would have been disastrous.
Hmm.
So no small planes here for sure.
Well, that's Jay, did you get out and flew it? I think you did get out. And
I
fly,
did.
didn't
I
you?
did yesterday. I got out and flew a little bit. We had a
Excellent.
little bit of weather that was moving in, and I got out right before it rained. It sprinkled a little bit, so very nice. It was, it was one of those like you get out and it's all kind of. It looks like it wants to storm, and so it's like the wind would blow for a little bit and then stop. And then all of a sudden you get that smell in the air and you're like, okay, I better go fly now because it may start pouring in 5 minutes, so that's kind of like how it was. I was like getting out there and then you get a little bit of the sprinkles, just that ever misty type thing. You're like, is it going to start coming down? Okay. So, but despite that, the weather held off enough that I was able to get out just for a little while.
Excellent.
Now,
Well-
I haven't flown recently, but what I have done is gave a bunch of gear to somebody and let them fly.
Oh, so tell us, do tell.
So there's a teacher, his name is Corey, and he teaches in a nearby school district, and I know him from paramotoring, and we were been talking. He's like, "Yeah, I'd really love to show my kids, stuff about RC and this, that, and the other thing." I was like, "Okay, well, let me see what I can put together." So I started digging through my gear, the stuff that I hauled down from Alaska that I haven't touched since I hauled it down here for the most part. And I think I gave him what was it called? Tactic radio, which had a couple of receivers. So it's not just one receiver, it had multiple receivers, so he could build a couple planes potentially. And then I gave him, what was that plane, Jay, that the glider plane that was like the Bixler, but it wasn't, that we bought?
It was like the Bixler, but wasn't.
Yeah, it's a push prop glider type plane. Anyway, it was like $100 plane or something like that. If I remember right, we bought it. I think we paid $80 for it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
Was it
What's
a
that?
Hobby King?
Yeah, probably. Like I said, it was $80 and it was about the same size as a Bixler. It flew like a Bixler.
Sure, it wasn't a Bixler.
It wasn't. What's that? No, it wasn't Bixler.
Oh, Bixler 2.
Sorry, I don't remember. But anyway, he flew that, and I got a text message the other day. "Hey, Mike, sorry about that. I crashed your plane." I said, "You did? Did you tape the thing back on?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it flies fine." I was like, "Okay."
That wasn't the one that we took out to the hill and we slope soared, was it? And we taped it all
No.
up for you?
No, this is something I had here. That plane I only had here. I bought that since I got here.
Oh,
But
okay.
I hadn't flown it in forever.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
It takes these little 1,003 cell batteries.
It's the Multiplex MX Shark, or
That's it, Shark. It's the
Yeah,
Shark.
Shark.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And so he flew that, and I guess he was flying with the power on, and he trying to land it with the power on,
Oh yeah, that's not.
and
gonna
so
work.
he was basically porpoising and couldn't figure it out, and he said he nosed it in, and I think it had already been nosed in a couple times before because I was using it as a training plane. That's exactly the one
There
right there,
you
Jay.
go. That's it.
And so so he took that and I said, yeah, just put some glue on it, put some, whatever. Well, I broke all the stuff. I said, yeah, it's fine. If you have to put weight in the back, that's fine too, just so it'll CG out,
Sure.
whatever. It's a foam plane. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's the one, Jay. That's the one.
It's like he's Vanna White show.
Oh yeah, I agree. Use your hand chip motions. There you go. Thank
there
you.
you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
turn the tile.
He's not as good looking as her, but I'll say that he's doing a good job.
Oh, if you're listening on the website or listening on the podcast, make sure you go over to the YouTube channel at the Park Flyer Podcast YouTube, and you can actually subscribe. You can see Jay in his Vanna White, role.
Yeah, well, I'm not wearing a gown. That's the only disappointment.
Yeah,
that's mostly why you don't look like her, Jay.
That's it.
But those high heels on though, you guys.
That and the beard. I think
so
those two things, if you could clear those two things, you'd probably be all right.
Yeah. Hey, so to give you a little insight on this particular plane, if you remember, we got these on sale. It's kind of like when you got not at the same time that you got the fundraiser, but from that same company.
Right around the same time.
And it was like 50, this was on sale for like 50 or 40
what was it, that
bucks.
Warehouse? Friday Warehouse or
yeah,
Saturday
Friday
Warehouse.
whatever. Yeah. Weekend, it was weekend Warehouse.
Weekend Warehouse, that's right. And they were just cheap.
Yeah, they were dumping these things for like 40 or 50 bucks, and I called everybody up and we got one. Now, the cool part about this plane is that you can actually get floats for it. And they basically have an enlarged nose that slips onto the front, and it allows you to take it off of the water as well. But unfortunately, those are hard to get. But that was when I saw that, I was like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." Just because I like float planes. And I just thought
it's a great little plane. It flies really nicely. Really, from a first plane perspective, if you just can figure out how to be hands off when you land it, and just let the thing glide in and land.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you got to be 6 miles out because that thing glides forever.
Oh, yeah,
glides forever.
Well, speaking of gliders, today's topic is actually about a glider.
Yes.
Yeah. E-Flight came out, I guess it's been about 6 months ago, with the Conscendo.
Crescendo.
Yeah, it's a Conscendo.
I think it's
Conscendo.
And it's a warm liner. And thank you once again to Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Because he actually got a hold of one and said, "Hey, you guys, you should put this together and fly it and give it a kind of a review on the podcast." And I know there's several guys on the E-Flight website that have already kind of reviewed it, but this was our first chance to kind of talk about it. And Jay basically opened the box and fell apart. And,
I almost feel kind of cheated as for trying to give a build review because there really is no build review.
You just shake the box and it just pops out all together.
Embarrassingly so, yes. Usually most planes, when they say they're ARF or ready, almost ready to go or whatever, that means you have 20 hours to do something or, typically, ready in, just a few minutes usually means, okay, well, you got half a day, then you can probably get it together or something along those lines.
The rest of the day.
Really, guys, this thing impressed me just from the construction point of view or engineering-wise. Because
I think you must be disappointed, though, because, you usually like to I don't like the way this thing goes together. I'm going to mod that and make it better.
Right. Well, so like you said, this one's the Evolution. So it's the third in the series because there was two other ones prior to this. Around 2015, they just had the Conscendo or Conscendo or whatever you want to call it. That was
somebody please call in and tell us.
Tell us what the name of it is. Yeah. What do they call Mike?
830-444-4943. Let us know,
please.
So anyway, guys, the first one was supposed to be just a trainer, right? So it was only I think it only used 2 cells, and that was it. And it totally was first plane glider type setup, no power. So it was kind of weak in a few areas. So the body was a little weak. The wings had a little bit of flap to them. So then they came out with a second one. I think it was the Conscendo S or something. And that one had a little bit more powerful motor, but they used the same airframe. And so they were having a bunch of problems. I guess the tail had would have a lot more twist in it. Like I said, when you would start diving this thing or flying it very fast, you'd get a little bit twist in the wings and just a couple of other areas where I normally would say, okay, it's time to do some mods.
Right.
So this one, they definitely, from what I can see and from what I read and from what everybody was saying, the foam is way denser. It's I'm trying to think of a plane that would be good to. I guess maybe some of our FMS planes kind of have that kind of dense foam. So it's kind of heavy. in some areas, but I mean, it's really, really stiff. Small
Is it
beads.
an EPP foam or an EPO foam?
Oh, it's EPO, but it's really dense EPO foam. So
it's almost like something that you'd pack your television in.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So, I mean,
you bounce it off the ground? Or
yeah.
what?
Well, you know how you pick up some planes or EPO planes and you leave your thumbprint in it,
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't happen to this plane. You can grab it and manhandle it and you won't leave dents in it, which is good. And the plane's not like heavy. So they did some engineering. Things are hollowed out. But it definitely, not to say that that they added a whole bunch of extra carbon and extra stuff into it. I think they kept the main structure of the plane about the same. They just made the foam denser, and thereby it stiffened it up a lot.
Pretty impressive. Yeah, pretty cool that they were able to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I know exactly what plane this is. Remember my old multiplex warm lighter that I had?
Oh, the Blizzard.
Mike? Yeah. I had it up in Alaska.
Yeah, it's the Blizzard.
Yeah, the Blizzard. So that one had a really dense foam, and that's the kind of foam it has. It's dense, just like that.
Yeah, that's the same EPO, I think.
Yeah. So it's a similar plane, but where the Blizzard, the Blizzard was awesome. And when I compare the two, I'd say the Blizzard went a little bit faster because, of course, I put a big motor in it. But the problem was that thing would tip stall like nobody's business. And these guys kind of figured out a way around that. So, but from the building standpoint, this is way easier than putting the Blizzard together because the way you put the Blizzard together, it had a bunch of fiberglass strips and pieces of little things, and you had to glue them all in, all over the wings, all over the body. It was a pain in the butt. And this one, quite literally, you have the spar, you had to maybe not glue on the tail. They used tape to put the tail on with a couple of screws, and that was it. I mean, realistically, it really was shake the box, and everything fell out. All the things electronic parts were put together for you, at least in the PNP model that I was using. Everything was put together. Everything was soldered together. Everything was ready to go. I didn't have to plug in any of the things. So
I think that foam is called a Lapor foam. Yeah, because the Blizzard and I think I have my Mixmaster, the what do you call it? The Mangler one that it's made out of Lapor foam as well. And you're right, it's much more dense than just the EPP.
Yeah, that's the multiplex foam that yeah, that's the foam for sure. So that's what the foam that they're using. But so putting the plane together was fantastic. Quite literally, if you were slow, drinking a Coke, not paying attention, and not trying hard, 10 minutes to put the plane together. I mean, and then the nice part about it, you keep the box because definitely if like we were flying out for the electric festival, you would ship it in the box. You would just take the box with you, and you bring the plane with you when you go places. So that's a plus. So it's really nice. But after putting the whole plane together, like I said, after my 10 minutes of not paying attention, the hardest part for us prior to us flying was the programming of the plane. And
how was it? How do you mean that?
Okay, so the receiver that that plane uses is an AR637T Alpha, and that's an AS3 telemetry style receiver. So that thing is really cool. It's got a Vario in it, a full set of telemetry, for sending out stuff. But you have to program it for the safe mode, and also for setting up the S3 for the gyro side of it. And that's where we had a little bit of difficulty. When I tried to, I went up to Scott's and we were trying to load up. He has an old DX7, and so the DX7 was one of the first generation ones, so it does do most of the stuff. And then we ran into the difficulty of guys who are a little bit more experienced doing things, which is we don't read instructions.
Yeah.
And this is something you should read. If you sit down and read the instructions, they write wonderful instruction manuals. But you have to sit down and actually read. When it says do these 5 steps, it helps to do them in order. It helps to turn on things. We were messing around with the save mode, and we are trying to program a switch. Well, we didn't realize, because if we would have read the NOTAM, like on the page before it, we would have saw that, hey, it says in big bold letters, you have to turn the safe mode on in order to turn on the switch thing later on. You skip over that part,
Yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't realize about the AS3X is that in order to activate it, you have to get above 20% on your throttle. If you don't do that, it doesn't come on.
That's correct.
So if you're sitting there, you're going, why isn't this working? You're moving the thing around. It's not reacting. Well, you got to turn the throttle up to 20%, then come back, and then you can move around, adjust things. So, it was just those 2 things that took us, a day and a half to kind of figure it all out, and then we got it working. But I will say that having a receiver that basically has this kind of flight control in it makes it wonderful for flying. Where my Blizzard, like I said, it would tip stall whenever you got it flying slow, and it would just flip over on a wing like nobody's business. Every time you got it slow to try to land it, was a pain. But having this Warmliner, where when we did fly it, I was trying to stall it. I got it up high, try to make it drop a wing, do whatever, and all it would do was just mush ahead, just fly. Like nobody's business.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was a little, got it really, really slow up there. I'm just waiting for it to fall out, do something. And it wouldn't, and that's because of the AS3. So it was that part was wonderful. So there's some other, like I said, we didn't mess with the safe mode at all, but the cool part about the safe mode, if for at least for beginners and for other people who want to use it, because I wasn't quite sure what you got with the safe, but basically if you select it into the safe mode, it allows you to launch your aircraft hands off. So it's a glider, you can toss it and then have enough time to pick up your radio and fumble with it, and it should just climb straight out, no problem. Once again, it sets the bank angle and it self-rights itself. So if you spec it out, you're not sure if it's coming towards you, going away, or if it's coming up or down. Hey, you just hit the safe mode, it'll right itself, and then you should be able to coax it back, no problem. So that's kind of cool. So I just really thought it was pretty cool for what you got with that setup with that particular receiver. Now, some of the things that receiver also does is it allows you to talk to the escape that comes, not escape, electronic speed controller. The electronic speed controller that comes with that particular glider it's not their Avion, smart, electronic speed control. But it does allow some telemetry information to go pass through it to the receiver, then to you. So you can check out the temperature of the escape. You could look at pack voltage.
Okay.
You can look at the current, and you can look at the RPM.
Did the guy jump out again?
What guy?
The guy who escaped.
Yeah, the guy escaped. All right. I guess so.
This is awesome.
I tell you. All right. What else? What else? My little notes here.
So now going back to the telemetry, because you mentioned that it would pass through. Was the older DX7 able to receive that? Because I know that they made a change at some point in there where
sure.
So older radios wouldn't accept telemetry. Some of the newer ones would.
Well, okay. So it does get some of that. It does get some of that telemetry. I think that we get things like it does the battery, the pack voltage.
Right.
I didn't see one for the current or the
I think
RPM.
the signal though.
But I think it does. Yeah, but I think it does the temperature. What was that, Mike?
You get the signal too. Signal strength.
Show those.
Oh yeah. I think it gives you that as well. But the once again, going between this, the old 7 and like my 9, and
right.
I remember when I had my old DX8, the reason I ended up trading my DX8 or selling it and getting the DX9 was once I had a talking radio. Well,
hard to go back.
It's hard to go back. And once again, I mean, all this stuff is great that you're getting that information, but if it's just being read out on the radio, and it's hard to look down at the radio and see what your current is, or see how much pack voltage you have, as opposed to you click a button and the button tells you what your, how much voltage you have. And that's the big thing, because, I would take my eyes off of my glider. I'm looking up to look down at the information that it's giving me. And that was part of the problem, because I'm,
Yeah, you don't just tilt your radio up to the sky.
I was going to say, most of us that are flying, when we're looking up in the air, we just bring the radio up to our
but still,
eyeballs.
still that's
We're
kind
not
of
like
hard.
Jay that looks around. He does that when he drives too, right? As he's driving and he looks down.
Yeah. Says the guy who's with.
I'm going to brake.
Yeah.
Which pedal is it again?
He looks down.
I always forget. Is that my left or right foot? Jay.
Yeah.
He looks back up. He's like, "Where's my plane?" Luckily, it has a safe mode, and he can just flip the button.
That's right.
Okay.
Ooh.
So
thank goodness for that. But so I think the next time Scott and I go and fly his glider, I'm going to bring out the DX8. I mean, the DX18 that you gave me for Christmas, and I'm going to hook that up because it has a lot more features, and it also lets you see a lot more stuff than the older 7.
But I don't know if I think you have a version 1. And
it's just the generation 1, so it's the same thing. It's not going to speak to me, but it should give me a lot more telemetry information than the other one can.
Yeah, because you can get a whole lot of telemetry there.
Yeah,
sure.
You can get speeds, and whatever the telemetry module will send, you'll be able to receive.
Exactly.
Yeah. So because I know mine has like 10 different slots. When you open the telemetry, auto-populates everything that's already being sent, and then you have like a whole nother page.
And the DX7 doesn't do that. Each slot. Well, no, it doesn't auto-populate. Each slot has, like, one will have like the current and the voltage. Those are the two things you can select in that slot. The next slot might be, I don't know. It'll be something else, but it'll be the temperature and the altitude or something. But each one has a certain thing for the slots.
It's a scroll where you have to assign it to that particular.
Right.
Huh. Very interesting. Well,
I think you've probably realized this question is coming.
What's that?
But what battery does it take?
Exactly.
Well, you're in luck there. It can take It can take a 1300 3-cell. On the low end, all the way up to a 2200 3-cell.
Yay!
And then for Mike and me, AZ Mike and me, it can go from, like an 1800 4-cell to a 2200 4-cell. Pretty much a 2200 4-cell is the max size that you can fit in there, unless you want to.
And there's some concern I've heard about people thinking that I won't fly a 4-cell. That isn't the case. I will fly a 4-cell. I just don't own any.
Yeah, that's true.
So if I can borrow one from Mike or Jay, and I'm happy to use a 4-cell or a 6-cell or a whatever cell.
We got to give a shout out to Philip because he actually threw a comment on our YouTube page about Mike and said that he get bored with the 3-cells and move up to a 4. But it has everything to do with the size battery and the charger, and just wanting to stay in a specific. Well,
it's a matter of in any one of my planes that I own, in all of my stable of planes, the same set of batteries. I just bring all those batteries to the field, and whatever plane I feel like flying, I just stick one of those 2200s in.
That's true. I never hear you go, man, I forgot to bring X battery.
Exactly.
I forgot to bring
I never say that, exactly. Except for when I'm flying that Shark, when I needed those thousands, and I didn't have the batteries for that. Then I was like, oh, man.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Mike, the most of the airplanes that I take to the field all use the same battery as well.
Right. They use the 6-cell monster batteries.
That's right. 5,000 milliamp 6-cell. So
which is great, right? So I can definitely move to that space when I have enough money to be able to pay for planes that are of that caliber. Then I will definitely do that.
When your batteries cost more than the airplane,
that's exactly right.
I
could buy a battery or an airplane. Those are the choices I have. Right now, I spent $50 on my paramotor starter battery, which was a 4-cell. So I do own a 4-cell.
Yay! There you go.
One 4-cell.
One 4-cell.
Yeah,
that won't fit in anything, right? Other than your paramotor.
Oh, not the planes I currently fly, but I could certainly find a plane that would fit that battery, and I would definitely work that angle. Like have
Sure.
a stable of 4-cell batteries that start my paramotor, and then have planes that fly that too, because then I got multi-use out of it.
I got one battery, and I've got 5 airplanes that use the one battery.
No, I would have multiple batteries at that point, because they all work in the paramotor at this point.
Right,
see?
right. It's dual purpose.
Hey, come on, guys. You remember I used to have one receiver amongst like 3 or 4 planes.
So,
I remember that. I did that myself.
Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, what
was it? 72 megahertz. I mean, I'm going to age myself here a little bit. I remember when switching crystals was, I think, illegal.
I think so.
At some point it was. And then you had to send it back to the factory to get the crystal tuned with the thing and the whatever. And I was like, I'm not doing that. This thing still works. It's all good.
I couldn't fly to any of the fields because it'd shoot down everybody and it'd all get mad.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like it was over blasting anybody. I just, you just got to be careful that you're not flying on 72.576, something just on the other side of the wrong side, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to claim these 2 frequencies because they're on either side of what I think mine is.
You're rolling up there with 3 flags, taking up 3
exactly,
flags.
Exactly.
Just put one on one side, one on the other, and one in the middle.
I just had my friends stand there with radios that weren't really working.
There you go. That's hilarious.
I didn't have that many friends, so that's not true.
Well, so what did you think of the flying?
So the plane, like I said, so the good stuff about the plane, once we got it programmed and we got it flying, it was uneventful. I mean, the launch was uneventful, trimming it out was uneventful. The plane flew great. It sounded great. That was the great part, was listening to Scott. As the plane went by and was making the whooshing sound. Mm-hmm. So he was digging that. Like I said, the great part about it is you could fly it on either one. And the day we were out there was kind of a blustery day. So we just flew it mainly on the 4-cells, and you couldn't even tell it was windy, super gusty, windy out there. And like I said, that's
pretty well, huh?
Yeah. And
maybe I need to get that plane so I can fly it.
Oh yeah, and that's due to the receiver, helping out there. So
yeah, sure.
It did great. It did great work with that, with the wind, with the 4-cell. I mean, you just zoom up, get up to altitude, get up there, glide for a bit, then like you come diving down, come whooshing by, put the coals to it, and go back up again. It was just great fun. So I'd say on an average on a 2200 4-cell, we were easily getting 20 minutes, and we weren't even trying. I mean, we weren't even trying to catch thermals or do any of that other stuff. We were just out there, cruising, surfing a little bit on the wind. And that's another thing. And I would definitely highly recommend anybody, when they set up their radio, set up 2 timers, of course. One timer for the actual how much, how long your battery's been running, and the other one you can see just how long you've been flying.
Right.
So that would definitely be a big plus.
On all my gliders, I usually have that. When you push the throttle forward and the motor's
running, it activates,
counting up, and then you have a second timer on my radio that just does a lapse time from when the throttle goes up. It tells me.
Yeah, because we're always trying to see who's up there the longest.
Yeah, I think my record's like 45 minutes. So.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was on the. Actually, Jay and I actually flew it. It was the
Phoenix 2000.
Phoenix 2000. Yep, sure was.
And before I met you 2 guys, flying in Alaska, I had a 3-hour flight.
What? 3 hour?
3 hours.
No. Did it get stuck into 3 and took you 3 hours?
Did you have a neck brace?
I actually didn't need one. What was cool is that where we were flying was on the top of a mountain. It was actually, what's that hiking mountain that's out in Alaska there, Jay?
Denali?
I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's right over the bay, right over the inlet there, and the wind was just coming right up the slope, and it was a nice, easy breeze day. It wasn't like too windy or whatever, and it was a easy, gentle lady.
Oh, gentle lady.
Well, no wonder you have
or sleeping lady.
Yeah,
exactly.
it is a sleeping
and
lady.
I tossed that puppy in the air, and I set it on a turn, and that thing just went around and went around. I laid down, was with friends. We were just chatting away, talking about it, watching it, pointing at it. You're like, oh, that's a little high up there, isn't it, Mike? Oh, yeah, I guess it kind of is, I guess. I mean, it'll be fine. And then I get a little bit nervous and bring it down, and it'd be, sketchy because it's like, oh crap, it's going to land. Oh no. And then I'd catch some more air or find a thermal or whatever, and then set it on a twist again, and it would go slowly up again.
Yeah, well, you see, you're lucky you got that thing back, because Jay's right. It's asleep.
Well, here's the thing. So it got to a point where it's like, okay, this is long enough. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
We had fun. Let's go. How do I get this thing down? Turn. Nope, that's not doing it. It's just going up higher. Okay. Loops. And that was working. Yeah. So I was looping, and then what? What happened?
Did the wing
come
off?
The wing came off.
Oh, yeah, you overstressed the wing.
So that whole, of course, the plane went, and the wing went.
Well, that was a good way to get it down. Take the wing clean off.
Yeah, I think we found it all. Surprisingly, we found the wing because it was easy to spot, right? Because it just came fluttering down.
And that was the thing that was not damaged.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think it had a hole from there were brush, and it had a hole from being stuck there. And then we found the rest of it by we knew kind of where it was, and luckily the battery had stayed in it. So, listen,
yep.
I hear it, and we just found it. It was stuck in saved itself. It stuck right into a bush or branch. It didn't hit the ground, so it just sort of slid through some brambles and. It was a pain in the butt to get it out, but still, that's
wow.
Sounds a lot like
it was a great flight.
Sounds a lot like when we flew his Phoenix 2000 up there in Alaska, and it went through the trees. That sucker was like a lawn dart. It wasn't as bad as Jay's though. Jay's hit the ground and looked like an accordion, man. That thing smashed that front end. It had like 6 folds in it. That just looked like a Twinkie.
How was the battery?
I think
we
lost
ejected
the battery on that one.
Did it get ejected or something?
I don't remember.
I can't remember what happened to it, but it was one of those weird things. I think we were at the Walmart parking lot again.
Yeah, could have been.
And he tossed it and it flew around. We had it up soaring around, and all of a sudden it just pitched over and just was headed to the ground. And Jay's like, no. Bam! Just hit the cement.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking lot's like this big, and then we're in a field that's nothing but grass and, kind of soft, and it hits right on the asphalt.
Because he's probably over the Walmart roof.
He was.
Because his great thermals were there, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's how we got yours put back together. Is we took half of his stuff and half of your stuff and meshed them all together.
So that same plane I had in Oregon too, and I flew that one, and a hawk chased me into a tree.
Oh, no kidding!
I was flying around, and I got into his space, and he's like, "Oh no, dude, you are not going to be flying in my space." And he got I didn't notice it, but he was like slowly getting himself above me.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden I was watching him, and I was like, "This is cool." And I'm watching him, and obviously he folds his wings in. I'm like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, here he comes.
I hit the deck. I started
flying. Let me show you a little thing about potential energy.
and then I pulled up. I saw him sort of wing out, and I pulled up, and the reason why he winged out is because the tree was there, and so I ended up in that tree because of that.
That's sad. Well, hopefully it didn't get damaged.
Well, yeah, it did, but you got to fix that stuff.
That's true. Well, so we've been talking about thermaling. Is this airplane kind of set up? I know when Scott and I were kind of having this conversation, he was talking about thermaling, but this looks to me more like a warm liner.
It does. It's kind of set up for a warm liner. I can't really comment it because the days that we've flown it have always, have been really windy days. Mm-hmm. So it's been under throttle. It's been, glided in, that wind as opposed to looking for thermals. So, right. I haven't had it on a good, calm, thermally day to give any real comment. I will say that you probably will be able to thermal it. It won't be as good as, say, maybe like, a 2 meter,
Yeah, the ASW.
Yeah, well, I think it'll do fine because it does have a the receiver that it does with the AS3X, because you can slow it down and fly it really slow, right? And not have to worry about it falling out of the sky. So you should be able to get reactions. Right. Now, what I don't know with most gliders, right? You hit a you hit a thermal, that side of the wing will come up, right? And you go, oh, hey, there's thermal over there, and you can turn into it.
turn into it?
Well, if you have, a AS3X, system that automatically corrects for that, will you get the same, what is the response for when it,
Oh, that's a good point.
it puts the wing tip up? Does it immediately put the wing tip back down? I don't know.
Can
Right.
you
Turn that off?
turn that off on
I
and
don't.
off? Yeah.
Well, see, that's just the thing. That's the more of the stuff we have to play with and having more switches. We didn't set it up so that we can turn it on and off. So, I'm sure you can, but we didn't configure the radio, the radio up for that. So at this time, once you go over 20%, the AS3X is on, until you land it. So.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you could actually do something where it would turn off or have it on a switch.
Yeah. So that part, like I said, I don't know. And once again, if you turn it off, once again, and you fly it slow like that, well, now does it make the plane more susceptible to tip stalling? Right?
Well, I guess you'd have to turn it off and find out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, and honestly, the little module that they sell, I think it's an AS3000, not the ASX, but the AS3000, which is the module that just hooks to the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
It's always on, always on.
I
Okay.
see.
But you cannot turn it off. Once
Okay.
you plug it in, it recognizes that it's there, and it's like a 6-axis gyro.
So,
Right.
so you talking about flying a new plane and how nice it was to build this plane and for it to fly out and be normal, and it made me think about a little bit about like new flyers. Like one of the things I struggle with as I'm not a new flyer, but as a person building a plane, especially if it's a stick kit,
Mm-hmm.
my level of confidence for whatever reason drops like a rock. And it's not really my confidence that drops. It's more about my concern for this plane I just spent hundreds of hours building with sticks and crashing it
Right.
and not being put together right, or whatever the reasons are that. And I was thinking about the three of us. Like for me, I would be like real high anxiety. Like, on a scale from 1 to 10, my anxiety would be up at 8 or 9, easy for a new plane like this. If it was for the fun jet, I didn't even spend much time on that one. And
Yeah, the
my
fun
anxiety was really high.
And
And Jay's sort of in the middle there, and I'd say Mike is less so. To me, it seems like, I know this isn't true, but when I give the plane to Mike, he's like, yeah, whatever, it's going to crash or not, I don't care. And then he flies it. Now, I know that's not what's going through his head, but it
Right.
feels like that to me. As a guy who has high anxiety, his anxiety is like at a 2 or a 3, and that's high for Mike at a 3. And,
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking about that. And I wondered, do you guys have any thoughts on the idea of dealing with that? I mean, we're not doctors here or whatever, but
Sure.
like, what are things that you guys do for yourselves? And I've seen Jay have anxiety for planes too, to deal with, to sort of counteract that, or to just sort of deal with that as a flyer, as a park flyer, when you're getting a new plane. I suspect there'll be 1 or 2 people who go and get this plane because of how you've talked about it, and just it's like,
Right.
it seems like a good plane.
Yeah.
It's got a reasonable price point. It's
Mhm.
got a 2200 battery. Why wouldn't anybody buy that? And so I just wondered what's your feedback on that whole idea?
Jay?
Well, that's a good question, because some it's funny, right? Some planes I don't have any anxiety about, but I'll give you a good example. I got a Christmas gift, and it was from AZ Mike, and he got me this
Hey.
plane. I was all torqued out about it, not because it was beyond my difficulty. It wasn't because it was super special, that like it was something that I always wanted. I always wanted this plane, but it was just that, he gave me this gift, then he showed up, we put it together, built the plane. And then when I went to go fly it, I was so nervous. And it was just one of those things that, hey, he got me this gift, we're going to go out and fly it. And I just got, for whatever reason, I can't quantify why that particular plane, but I was so nervous to fly that thing, and it just freaked me out. And I was just like, I don't know why I'm so freaked out about flying this gift that I've gotten. But I guess it was just the fact that he got me this plane, we put it together, And then I'm flying it, and I'm like, oh, man, I sure don't want to wreck it or do anything to it while he's here, right? Because here's this gift he got me, and then smash.
Right. Right.
Didn't care about that thing.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. Right. So I guess it just got to me, and I got really nervous about flying that plane. But,
I mean, the way I fly planes is whatever new plane it is, my anxiety is high. If it's an older, like the Fun Racer, I still have anxiety about that plane because it's just so fast. But I don't, I don't feel that way now because I've flown it enough times. So I'd say I probably have a 3 or a 4 when I'm flying that plane.
Right.
But sometimes that thing gets to whipping, and it's like, oh no, it just feels like, for whatever reason, it just feels out of control. But once I've flown it a couple times, then I can do, rolls or whatever, whatever I feel like doing, to fly it. So Mike, what about you?
Well, so for me,
what are you thinking even?
Well, so that's a good question, actually.
Use my Fun Racer as a good example because that's pretty fresh. Like
right, and so the Fun Racer, first of all, for me, I lower my anxiety by making sure mechanically that everything is correct. So if I have, and I obviously want to fly with a little bit more control, right? So I know when we set up your Fun Racer, it was very important for me to have a high rate and a low rate, because with a low rate, you can only get that rate. But if I have a high rate and I get into trouble, I can always flip to the higher rate, or I can launch it in the high rate and have a lot more throw than a low rate where you're just kind of, if it's headed to the ground and I pulled all the way back, I got nothing, right? It's going to the ground.
Right.
So mechanically, if the throws are the same, all of the control surfaces are lined up, the power works, everything's going the right direction, then to me, the airplane should react exactly like I want it to react.
Okay.
It should do exactly what I tell it to do.
Okay.
Now, there are times when something happens and it doesn't do what I want it to do. But I think for me, the difference is that a lot of new flyers or a lot of people with less aviation experience will panic. And I don't want to throw Big Mike under the bus, but we'll talk about him real quick. Big Mike,
Here comes the bus, Mike.
Before, right, and in the past, he's panicked and he starts pulling on the sticks, trying to figure out what the airplane's trying to do.
And to be clear, I've done the same thing.
A lot of people have, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference because your anxiety level now is through the roof and you're trying to get the airplane to react some way that makes sense in your head. And because of the many years that I have flying both inside the airplane and outside the airplane, I just think my thought process is a little bit different. Whatever control I put in is so minor. I mean, you've watched me fly. I hardly ever move the sticks. I mean, I'm not banging the sticks unless I'm flying 3D.
Right, where I do, yeah.
Where on a maiden or a new airplane or whatever kind of airplane, I'm just going to let the airplane track out. And if I'm not putting out any inputs, the airplane should do exactly mechanically what I want it to do.
Yeah.
Then when I go to put an input in, it's a slight input to get it to turn left or right or to climb. If that input does anything other than what I want it to do, then my brain goes into that, okay, what's happening? How do I correct it? If I pull back and it pitches over, it's an automatic pitch forward to get the reaction, right?
Right.
So I think part of that is my experience as a pilot, and part of it is an experience for many, many, many hours on the simulator.
Sure. And that's something that you have for sure that I don't have, which is I've never had a simulator I had a simulator, but it wasn't like the one you had, the Real Flight one, which I know, like every person I've ever talked to about flying planes, I said, you know what you really want to do? And they're like, yeah, practice. And I was like, yeah, but not with your plane. They're like, what?
Mm-mm.
Get a flight simulator. What do you mean? It's like, even if you have to get the cheapy flight simulator that's free online, and you rig something up, do something that you can fly that.
Well, I will tell you that way back when, many years ago, that Jay and I'd call each other and spend hours on the phone. But 9 times out of 10, when Jay called me, what was I doing?
You're on the sim.
I was on the sim. And what I did is I started, like, Real Flight came with, like, I don't know, 70 to 100 airplanes, right? Then you can go download a whole boatload more. I would download as many airplanes as I could stack in the thing, and I would literally turn the airplane. I would go to the very Albatross or whatever the very first airplane was, and I'd fly it, and I'd do touch and go, 3 touch and goes one way, 3 touch and goes the other way. I'd go to the very next airplane, and then I would do touch and goes with every single type, whether it was a Bixler or a turbine,
whatever it was, right?
Whatever it was, I would do three one way and 3 the other. And I got to the point where my controls depended on what type of airplane it was. If I was flying a turbine, it was hardly moving the sticks at all. If I was flying that, what do they call that thing? Oh man, Commander. I don't know if you remember that one, Jay. It was that. As a matter of fact, I have one. It's the Redbird.
Oh, that
thing.
Yes, that Redbird. Yeah, Redbird Commander.
Yeah, and it's like a rubber band looking thing. You put the wings on with a rubber band, you spin it up, and it's got like a tricycle gear with a boom tail.
Yeah,
and that thing is horrible.
I think another word thing was like Firebird something.
Firebird something or whatever. Yeah. But they had it on the simulator, and it was the worst flying thing ever because it's only a rudder, and it's way underpowered, and it's
stacking everything in your favor.
Right. And so having done that, and then having Jay and I spend so much time doing the failures, I got to the point where even if the airplane fails, something fails in the airplane, my mind, my hand-eye coordination just automatically reverts to what, basically what's happening to the airplane. So I can react. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I haven't crashed my fair share of airplanes, because I have. But I usually know, what happens, or I can usually get it pretty close, to where I can save it.
Sure.
The other thing too, Mike, is that the park flyer group that I'm with, the 5 or 6 guys, almost every week they brought a new airplane.
Right.
And the difference in levels was so great that they would go, "Here, Mike, fly this," and I'd go, "Okay." We got to make sure everything's going the right direction. Everything looks good. Okay, we'll toss it in the air. And some of them just went, right into the ground. And I'm like, something ain't right.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about that, because half the time, either they put their prop on backwards. They had the servos going in the wrong directions for things. They didn't tighten down the servos. The rods were moving.
This reminds me of a time that Jay and I were together. And we were flying planes and whatever, and some dude brought up his plane. And I don't know, I may be speaking out of turn here, and maybe Jay was like a little bit irritated that the dude did it because we were in the middle of flying stuff, and he sort of came over. But Jay's not really like that way. So, my point is, though, is that he really didn't have sense about, like, there's no close relationship with that person. There wasn't, it wasn't a plane that he cared about. And he turns to the guy and says, "Did you check the CG and the surfaces?" And the guy says, "Yep, sure did." I think it was a guy that we had talked to before, and he was just a guy who wasn't listening. Like, he didn't listen to stuff that we had suggested. And so Jay said, "Okay, you've got everything checked. You checked the CG and everything before you give it to me. You checked all that?"
Okay, I think
and the guy's like, "Yep, for sure I did." And Jay's like, "Okay." And he goes, "Mike, give it a toss." And so I throw it. And that thing was all over the place because it was tail heavy. And Jay was just like, "Whoa, what's going on? Whoa, smack." That thing was done. And the guy's like, "Dude, what did you do?" And Jay turned to the guy and said, "I flew the plane that you gave me.
Yeah.
You gave it to me this way. I flew it this way. I did not make an error here.
Right.
That thing is tail heavy to all get out." So we put it together, what was left of it, to put it together to see, and you could see, like, you put it on there and the tail goes, whoa, drop down below, and you're like, yeah, this thing is just friggin' tail heavy. You never check the CG. And Yeah.
I think another thing for me, Mike, is that way back when I got my first balsa airplane, I think we did a podcast on it one time. It was the SU-31.
Uh-huh.
It was with Hyperion, and
Uh-huh.
it had a misprint. So it said like the CG was supposed to be 105, and it was
remember
like
this.
25, so it was really tail heavy, the same thing.
Yes.
And I'll tell you at that point, because it was my very first balsa airplane, I was really not wanting to destroy it, right? So my anxiety level was a little higher at that point, and it started doing some funky things, and I gave the radio to someone else.
Uh-huh.
And he just freaking stripped the gear off, he crashed it. And I was just like, dude, I could have done that, right? I mean, I was giving it to him because I thought that there was an opportunity for him, because he said, "Oh, I have one of those. I had the same problem." In my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, then you can help me out."
Yeah.
No, he crashed his, and so he crashed mine. And I'm all like, "Well, that didn't do any good at all. Why didn't I just keep it? And I could have done the same thing, right?"
Right.
And that's happened to me probably 2 or 3 times where I've been like, okay, maybe I should give this to someone, because in my head, I'm thinking I'm not doing the right things. They could help me out. They won't end up crashing the airplane. And then I'm like, I could have crashed it just as easily.
It's funny you said that too. I think we talked about this before. Big Mike was having that trouble with that airliner he had.
Yeah.
And I was standing next to him talking with you, or doing something with Jay or something else nearby, but not helping. And he goes, "Here, Mike, take it." It's like, no, dude, you're doing fine.
Right.
Just pay attention to what I'm telling you. Come this way. Go. Just take. You're doing fine. You got this. You have control, because the plane was coming at us, which was really what we needed to be able to see the damn thing. And then I'm right. I mean, because it was way out there, and it started coming at us. I was like, all right, we're coming at us, so that's good. Now get over the runway. Well, I don't know how to do that. It's like, you just push it left a little bit. Not that way, the other left.
Right.
It was just because he was, as you said, he was panicked, and he I get why. Like, I would have been panicked too, because he spent a good amount of time putting that plane together, and it really was a nice looking airplane.
Yeah, it had sound and everything.
Had an interesting color thing, and sound and everything. Right, it was very cool. And he ended up putting that plane landing it, which ended up being cool. And I think that's the other thing too, is like you're a guy who's ready to help. But to be able I think I'm too quick to take the control from somebody. I
can understand that too. Especially as a AMA instructor, it's difficult, because you want to reach over and go, "Here, let me do it."
Yep.
And that's not really
the guy doesn't learn anything.
Right.
And at the same time, though, you've got to watch, because you can't wait until you make this like in a nose,
especially if you don't have a training gear set up. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had guys do that too, where they, they're already in this graveyard spiral headed down at Mach 4, and there's no way
with a trail of smoke behind it with flames.
Exactly. And then, well, here, save my plane, and you're like, not me.
The
Jack.
wing guard already snapped off, dude. There's no way I can save the plane.
Right. You already.
Where's the self-destruct button? Doosh, there you go.
Exactly.
But I think that the biggest part, and I know this is easier for other, for me to say versus other people, but that not panic, the big panic that comes in with your anxiety level.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of guys go into these first flights or maiden flights by saying, okay, don't crash. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Try to get out of that and try to go into and Jay and I were talking about this one time when actually the airplane that he was, worried about. And I go, look, if it's set up correctly, it's going to do what you tell it to do.
Right.
That's what you should expect. So just take off. Don't jerk the airplane off the ground. Let it fly off the ground, and then do what you do with every other airplane in your, basically in your collection.
When we flew John's Cub at the Electric Fest, I think Mike and Jay had both flown before me, so I knew it was relatively great configured plane, right? I wasn't worried about that. Now it's just a matter of, can I land it without crashing it? And that was my main concern. So I knew I could take it off, but was I going to be able to put it on the ground without? And, to the credit of that plane, I think if I remember right, I landed it hands off, and they were like, wow, that was a really good landing. Yeah, I didn't have any hands on it. And they're like, what? Yeah, I landed hands off. I let go of the sticks.
Right.
you're kidding. It's like, no, that thing just landed on its own. I didn't do anything.
I think it had a gyro in there too.
Yeah.
It might have, whatever was configured. I'm not trying to say one thing or other. I just know that I was like, okay, let's see what this thing can. I think it did have a gyro because I was like, let's see what this thing can really do, right? And I was just like, I had my fingers near the sticks, but I was just like, hands off the whole way down, and it just went. Whoop. I mean, it was awesome.
I guess the other thing, it's kind of funny you brought this up because when I was out in the field today, we had a guy that was flying a F-18. It was Blue Angel's little
That's
the
a Hornet.
E-Flight. Yeah, the E-Flight one that they just came out. It's kind of EDF. And his takeoff was a little questionable. And I said, well, maybe I should go, here I am watching some guy, possibly going to crash his airplane. I'm the instructor. So I said, okay, I'll just go up there and spot for the guy. And that way I'll just watch him. And, he came in and immediately as he turned base to final, pulled the power to idle. Which
That's me.
Right. Which if you're flying, once again, we've talked about this on a previous podcast. If you're flying a propeller, that's fine because you have instant power as soon as you add it. But in an EDF,
can't do that.
You're screwed. You don't have it. And man, that thing came flying out of the sky. He was landing downwind as well.
Oh wow!
And so it just came down and just pancaked, just bam, and it bounced about 6 feet back in the air. Luckily, he was already in the power because I was like, power. You can hear me behind him. And he was already coming in as it hit the ground. So it bounced and it kind of hung there. And then he brought it around and I let him land again, and he tried another downwind landing. But I asked him afterwards, I said, so are you open to some suggestions? Because I always hate to be the guy that walks up and just starts assuming that you are brand
spewing
new.
Knowledge.
Right. And I have a lot of it, trust me. I mean, and it's all packed in there. And I have a, diarrhea of the mouth. It'll just be like, blah, and the next thing you know, I'm talking aerodynamics to the guy and he's just like looking at me with glassy eyes. But he said he was. And so I told him, I said, it looks like you were fairly new flying EDFs. He goes, yeah, I'm really new flying. I'm still learning. And I was like, perfect. Then I said, I'm one of the club instructors and, I can give you a few pointers if you're willing. I can tell you a few things that you did wrong on this flight that may help you. So we talked about power management. We talked about downwind versus upwind and how to actually turn. His problem is that he's used to flying a box pattern. And when he took off, the winds changed. How do you go from this pattern to the other pattern?
Yeah.
Especially since you came around with a gear pass. And he's like, well, I didn't have enough energy. I don't have enough battery to go all the way around and change directions. And I was like, I said, well, if you're coming down the runway in a gear pass, turn 30 degrees out and do 180 degree back around to the other runway. You can fly figure eights. And he goes, oh yeah, I guess you can. Not that it was any, special thing that he understood, but in his mind, because he's new and he's controlling this.
Well, I mean, I know some people can only fly to the right. They won't fly to the left.
They won't fly to the left, but you need to do both. And that's hence back my comment where I would fly every airplane on real flight and do 3 this way and 3 that way. I got to the point where I could do it, both directions. So
I think the thing for me too is I know what's supposed to be done.
Yes.
But I can't always execute it.
Yeah.
That's called experience, my friend.
Well, and then there's the ear to brain to fingers delay as well, right? And Mike's like power, and I'm like, what?
As you're hearing, it's like,
did you say power? Yeah, exactly. I was thinking tower when you first said it, so I didn't know how that fit with what we were doing.
That's funny. Well, I think just practice and trying to lower your level and not starting out with that I'm going to crash, don't crash kind of thing.
Well, there's a lot to be said for the idea that you mentally see the plane coming down well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said for the idea. It says, okay, well, the way this thing takes off is the way it lands.
Mm-hmm.
Given all things equal, it's going to land as easy as it takes off.
Right.
And so, if it takes off crappy because it's tail heavy, and it's going to land really crappy too. But
yeah, and I think people get airborne. This is one of the things that I've seen a lot, is that people will head down the runway or park or wherever it is. The airplane gets airborne and starts doing something they don't want it to do. So they try to come all the way back around and land. Yeah. Don't do that. Just pull the power to idle, let it land out there.
Yeah.
Because you'll do less damage to it if you just let it, kind of go straight ahead than you will if you come all the way back around. So,
and I find deep breaths make a difference.
Deep breaths, control your breathing.
Woosah.
Don't rub your ears though while you're flying.
No, don't pat your tummy and rub your head. So, well, let's see. On a scale from 1 to 10, Jay, going back to the airplane, you would give it a.
I'd give it a 9, a solid 9.
Solid 9. Good.
Ease to put together. That was 10 out of 10. I mean, you can't get any easier unless it was already assembled in the box. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I said, the programming that was my doing. So hey, I was stupid. Now they wrote good instructions, but you got to read. So I give myself a 2 out of 10 for being dumb. But I give Horizon a good 10 out of 10 for their written instructions if you read them.
Excellent.
And then, like I said, the plane flies super easy. Having the a receiver with a built-in gyro and all that gyro, all that the receiver can do is phenomenal. So, not that I say that this would be a beginner plane, but for a second, third plane, this is an excellent choice. And like AK was saying, for it's sub 200, you get everything included, ready to go out of the box. All you need is a battery, quite literally a battery and a radio, and that's all you need to fly the plane.
And I would have one. I would already have one.
You can't beat it. And it flies good out of the box. It has capabilities for older radios, the brand new stuff, for the higher capability stuff that it can do. It's a pretty advanced thing. Like I said, the three of us wouldn't probably use the safe features, but there's no reason not to turn them on and have them on.
I think I would, just because I want to see it work.
Yeah.
So that when I hand the plane to someone who doesn't know how to fly.
The way I look at it is, if you want to train somebody or somebody who hasn't flown a glider, you could put the safe stuff on and they could fly it and not have to worry.
Or just let them fly it normal, and then when they're not doing well, just click.
Yeah. Or as they get used to it, you can click it on or off, or whatever. So from that standpoint, it's a great setup for what they did. So they definitely they definitely hit it out of the park with this particular model.
Good. Oh, we know that the Draco is now in stores.
Yes, it is. You didn't say Draco.
So, yeah, if you have one of those, shoot us an email at parkfilepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you think. I have two friends of mine that actually just received theirs. One of them called me today, Scott Berryman. He's out in Denver. And he was at the hobby store and had called me and said, "Hey, what's the story with this Spectrum battery?" I go, "How funny! You should listen to the other, just the last podcast. He hasn't caught back up yet." But I started laughing because I'm like, "Yeah, our last podcast we were just talking about it." But he bought the Spectrum that only went with their charger, the smart technology, and had to go back to version 1. So he was returning that one and getting the other one, and he called me to verify. So. I'm interested to hear what Scott thinks about it. He was headed home to charge his battery and get it in the air.
Oh, cool.
So he thinks it's going to be a pretty good, just throw in the back of the car, go fly anywhere.
Fun.
And then one of the guys out of my field has purchased one as well, and hopefully I'll get my hands on it here sometime in the future.
All right, cool.
We'll look at it. But I do know there was a limited run to some hobby stores, so if you were not able to order one, check your local hobby store and see if they have one in stock. It comes ready to fly, and hopefully we'll have more details on it as people start, kind of getting their hands on it and going.
Sounds like fun.
It does.
Other than that, our hour is up.
It sure is, buddy.
Man, it's time to go. But we appreciate you joining us here on the Park Fire Podcast, and we're looking forward to seeing you here in 2 weeks. So I'm Michael from Arizona.
And I'm Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike from Texas.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Let's fly.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, And feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.